Look at the dog wagging its tail, the cat walking along the top of the wall, the monkey swinging from branch to this branch to that branch. All of them have tails, all of them. Then look back at yourself. There is nothing at all. Just a flat, smooth back, ending in a little stump of bone that you only remember the existence of when you fall hard onto the hard floor. In the process of evolution, humans were overlooked, disadvantaged, lost a tool that almost every other vertebrate species on this planet has and uses every day. But this is something no one tells you. Right now, somewhere in the world, a human embryo is growing a tail. Not a metaphor, a real tail, with real vertebrae, protruding from the base of the spine, and not just one special embryo or another. Every human embryo does this, including you, including me, including all 8 billion people living on Earth right now. All of us once had a tail. Then it disappeared. And the reason why it disappeared? There are many layers of explanation, each layer stranger than the one before. And together, listen to the story of one of the most important random accidents in the entire history of human evolution. This goes very deep. Let us begin. Let us begin with something that sounds like a child's question, but in fact, no one could answer for many decades. What is a tail really? Not in the dictionary sense. In the real sense, for the animals that use it every day to survive. A kangaroo rat swings its tail backward in every jump to prevent tumbling in midair without a tail. It falls. A spider monkey in South America hangs its entire body from a branch by its tail. While both hands are free to do other things, the tail has its own brain region controlling it, has fingerprints at the tip, functions as a fifth hand in the literal sense. Old world monkeys use their tails as balance poles when running along branches. The higher they live, the longer the tail. A direct correlation refined by natural selection over millions of years. The vertebrate genome invests 31 genes specifically for building a tail. That is not an accessory. That is a serious survival tool. Yet one lineage of primates abandoned it completely, and that was not obviously smart. Let us begin with something that sounds like a child's question, but in fact no one could answer for many decades. What is a tail really? Not in the dictionary sense, in the real sense for the animals that use it every day to survive. Because if you do not understand that, you will never understand why losing it is so strange. Fish and whales use their tails as the main engine, not supporting movement, but the entire movement. The blue whale, the largest animal that ever existed on Earth, moves its entire mass of hundreds of tons with one up and down tail stroke. A kangaroo rat swings its tail backward in every high-speed jump to prevent tumbling in midair without a tail. It falls. A cat falling from heights spins its tail like a rudder to adjust the landing angle in a few tenths of a second before touching the ground. Stingrays hide weapons in their tails. A gecko voluntarily breaks its tail when caught, leaves the wriggling tail to escape, then regrows it after a few weeks. Macaques use their tails as a soundless social communication system. The alpha male holds its tail in an S shape. Lower-ranking males hold their tails parallel to the ground. The entire hierarchy in the troop is communicated instantly just through the angle of one tail. Old world monkeys run along the tops of branches using their tails as balance poles, adjusting posture in midair. In every jump, like a tightrope walker uses a balance pole. The higher a species lives in the canopy, the longer the tail. A direct correlation, refined by natural selection over millions of years because it works. And then there is the spider monkey in the New World with a prehensile tail, a tail strong enough to hang the entire body weight from one branch while both hands are completely free. The skin at the tip of the tail has friction ridges exactly like fingerprints. The brains of these animals have a separate cortical region dedicated to controlling the tail, the same kind of neural investment that the human brain dedicates to the hands. Calling it a fifth hand is not a metaphor. That is an accurate functional description. The vertebrate genome dedicates 31 genes specifically to building this structure. 31. Maintained through hundreds of millions of years of evolution, through mass extinctions, through every major upheaval this planet has ever gone through. Evolution does not keep anything without a reason. Tails exist because they do things that no other structure on the body can completely replace. Yet one lineage of primates abandoned all of that. Not gradually reduced, not slowly diminished in function, abandoned completely. And the strange thing is not that it happened, but that it turned out to be the thing that led to everything you are today. So where does the answer come from? It comes from a kitchen in New York in 2019 and a broken glass jar. Graduate student Bo Xia was washing dishes when he cut his hand. Nothing dramatic, just an emergency room visit and a few stitches. But sitting in the waiting room staring at the wall, he started thinking about scar tissue, then why some species can regenerate limbs while humans only scar, then why humans lost body parts in evolution, then why humans lost tails. He went home that night and read everything he could find about tail loss in primates. This is how real science sometimes works, not through grand research proposals, but through a lightly injured person sitting bored in a waiting room, chasing a curious thought to its end. Working with Itai Yanai at New York University, Bo Xie began digging into the gene TBXT, a transcription factor conserved across all vertebrates, coordinating tail development in the embryonic stage. When TBXT malfunctions, the tail does not form. Manx cats have no tail because of a TBXT mutation. Kazakhstan sheep have no tail because of a TBXT mutation. Laboratory zebrafish lose their tails because of a TBXT mutation. This is the universal switch that evolution uses to build tails in every species, conserved almost intact through hundreds of millions of years. When the research team compared the TBXT gene region between hominoids and Old World monkeys, they found something that should not be there. A strange piece of DNA located in intron 6 of TBXT, present only in hominoids, absent in any tailed primate. That piece was the ALU-Y element. ALU elements are mobile DNA pieces capable of self-replicating and inserting into new positions in the genome, usually without consequences. The human genome contains more than 1 million copies of ALU, the vast majority lying completely dormant. But this one was different. ALU was located more than 500 base pairs away from the splice site, a position that in theory should not affect how the gene is read. But in the adjacent intron 5 there was already another element, ALU-X1, oriented in the opposite direction, conserved in all simians from before. When the TBXT mRNA is synthesized, ALU-Y and ALU-X1 pair with each other like two magnets, creating a stem loop structure on the pre-mRNA strand, trapping exon 6 inside. The cell's splicing machinery encounters that trap and skips exon 6 entirely, creating a shortened version of the TBXT protein that had never existed in any tailed species. That shortened protein disrupts tail formation in the embryo. To confirm, the team used CRISPR to delete ALU-Y from human embryonic stem cells. The shortened isoform disappeared completely. Delete ALU-SX1. The isoform also disappeared. They need each other, missing one, and nothing happens. Then they introduced this mutation into mice. In 63 mutant mice, 21 were born without tails or with short tails. In 35 wild-type mice, none were abnormal. A single genetic change, isolated by people chasing a hunch that began with a broken jar in a New York kitchen, was enough to eliminate the tail in mammals. No one decided that humans would lose their tails. A mobile piece of DNA landed in exactly the right spot, met exactly the right partner that had been waiting, and the world changed forever. But this is the part where the story really begins to flip. Because up to this point, everything we have said sounds like a story of loss. Losing a sophisticated survival tool. Losing something that almost all vertebrates are still using every day. Losing something that evolution invested 31 genes and hundreds of millions of years to build. But that is not the real story. The real story is what happened next. Tails are not free. That is the first thing to understand. Muscle, bone, blood vessels, nerves, each centimeter of tail consumes real biological resources, resources the body could use for something else. And more importantly, the tail shapes the entire body mechanics. The body's center of gravity, pelvic structure, how back muscles distribute force, all are designed around the presence of a tail. When the tail disappears, that entire system is freed to restructure in a completely different direction. And this is why the timing of tail loss matters so much. At that time, hominoid ancestors were undergoing a major change in how they moved. Monkeys move quadrupedally on top of branches, 4 limbs gripping the surface, the tail an indispensable counterbalance for every run and every jump. But apes were shifting to something completely different, suspensory locomotion, swinging below branches by the hands instead of running on top. This is the style of movement that gibbons demonstrate today with speed and precision that makes you not believe it is a mammal. And in that style of movement, the tail was no longer an asset. When you are hanging below a branch and swinging from point to point by hand, there is no surface for the tail to help balance. The tail is just dead weight dangling behind, hindering movement, even possibly getting snagged on branches when swinging through dense forest. From an essential balance pole, the tail became what aerospace engineers call parasite drag, useless resistance that contributes nothing to performance. Losing the tail in that context was not a loss. It was streamlining, removing what was no longer needed so the body could fully specialize for the new movement style, focusing resources on upper body strength, shoulder joint flexibility, on the things that suspensory locomotion really needs. And then the next step happened, a step no one planned but in hindsight seems inevitable. The body had been restructured for upright movement, for hanging and climbing by hand instead of running on all fours on a horizontal surface, which turned out to be a much better foundation to eventually stand fully upright. Bipedalism did not appear out of thin air. It emerged from a body already shaped in an upright direction, a body without a tail pulling the center of gravity backward, a body whose pelvis and back muscles were free to reorganize without being constrained by the architecture of a tail. Standing upright is what a gorilla does when it wants to intimidate. It is what a bear does when it wants to look scary. Humans do it all the time as the default mode, without effort, without special reason, just the way we stand in line to buy coffee. And when the two hands no longer needed to be used for movement, they were free to do other things. Use tools, manipulate objects with a precision no other species has achieved. And the brain developed in a feedback loop with those hands, each new tool demanding a more complex brain creating more sophisticated tools, and so on until language, art, science, and everything you call civilization. Gibbons also swing on branches, also do not need tails much, but gibbons did not follow that path, because gibbons do not carry the TBXT mutation that triggered a cascade changing the entire body mechanics. Tail loss in gibbons was a local adaptation. In humans, it was the first link in a chain reaction spanning 25 million years. Every other species kept their tails because they needed them. Humans lost their tails because evolution found something even better, and that something is you. But this is the next question you should ask right now. If the ALUI mutation in TBXT is what created all those changes, why only humans? Chimpanzees carry that mutation. Bonobos carry that mutation. Gorillas carry that mutation. Orangutans carry that mutation. Gibbons carry that mutation. All hominoids share the same ALUI in the same intron of the same TBXT gene, all descending from the same genetic event, all lost their tails from the same molecular event that occurred 25 million years ago. Yet only one branch of them stands fully upright, developed language, built cities, and is sitting reading this. The answer is that tail loss was only a necessary condition, not a sufficient condition. It opened a door. But opening the door does not mean you walk through it. To walk through that door required the right environment, the East African savanna gradually expanding as tropical forests shrank, forcing ancestors down to the ground instead of staying in the canopy. It required the right pressures the ground demanded a different way of moving, and in that open environment standing upright gradually allowed seeing farther, detecting danger earlier, freeing the hands while moving. It required the next sequence of mutations in the brain, gradually increasing capacity, more complex neural connections, finally language. Chimpanzees carry ALUI but did not leave the forest. Gorillas carry ALUI but did not need to stand upright to survive in their environment. Orangutans carry ALUI but still live entirely in the canopy. The same genetic mutation, different environmental pressures, completely different outcomes. And even within the lineage leading to humans, that process did not happen overnight and did not happen uniformly. Recall the mouse experiment. The same mutation, not every individual lost its tail. The results were not uniform within the same generation. The early hominoid ancestors after ALUI appeared were the same. A population with individuals having shorter tails, longer tails, no tails, all coexisting. Individuals without tails or with short tails in the changing environment had a small advantage, not a dramatic advantage, just surviving a little better, reproducing a little more, passing on that trait to offspring a little more. Multiplied over hundreds of thousands of generations, that small advantage became completely fixed. There was no dramatic moment in that story. No individual knew they were part of something bigger. Just creatures surviving a little better in their environment, day after day, generation after generation, until the accumulation of all those small moments became us. The ALUI mutation occurred in the common ancestor of all great apes. But only one branch, your branch, encountered the right environment, the right pressures, the right subsequent chain of events to turn that into civilization. But this is something this story would not be honest if it did not mention. The mice in Boschia's experiment did not just lose their tails. Some of them developed neural tube defects, The same type of defect responsible for spina bifida in humans, where the spine does not close properly during embryonic development. And when the research team created homozygous mice, both copies of the gene carrying the mutation instead of just one, those mice were not born. Either they stopped developing completely in the embryonic stage, or they were born with severe neural tube defects and died at birth. The full isoform of TBXT is still necessary for normal development. Only heterozygous, one normal copy and one altered copy, allows survival. That means the mutation that took away our ancestors' tails was not a clean upgrade. It was not an upgrade without cost. It was a trade-off, a real trade-off, with a real price paid by the health of the unlucky individuals carrying two copies of the mutation in the original population. Neural tube defects are not a story from 25 million years ago. They are still happening today, affecting about 1 in 1,000 births worldwide. That is why doctors emphasize folic acid supplements during pregnancy at every prenatal appointment, because folic acid significantly reduces the risk of neural tube defects, and neural tube defects remain one of the most common serious birth defects in modern humans. Two independent studies, Shaheen and colleagues in 1996 and Morrison and colleagues in 2015, confirmed a direct association between variants in the TBXT gene and the risk of neural tube defects in humans. Xia's research team called this an adaptive cost, the official term to describe what evolution sometimes does, accepting a harmful disadvantage in some individuals in exchange for a large enough advantage in the rest of the population. It is strange to think about. A small genetic scar from a mutation that occurred 25 million years ago is still, in some roundabout evolutionary sense, present in the obstetrics clinic today, in the folic acid recommendation doctors give to expectant mothers, in the anxiety of families with children born with spina bifida. The trade-off from 25 million years ago has not ended, and that says something about the scale of the advantage that mutation provided, because that mutation spread, became permanent in every hominoid species, was carried through every generation despite that price. It means that no matter how great the advantage of losing the tail was, it had to be large enough to outweigh that price, generation after generation, for millions of years continuously. Every child born with spina bifida is proof that evolution is not free. The thing that took your ancestors' tails left a bill, and we are still paying it. Now stop and think about the probability of all of that. The human genome contains more than 1 million copies of ALU scattered everywhere, more than 60% located in gene introns, all lying dormant throughout the entire evolutionary history of the lineages carrying them, causing no measurable effect, just quiet passengers copied and passed on through each generation. The ALU we are talking about is one of them. Nothing special about its origin, no different from countless similar copies lying dormant in your genome right now, except for one thing. It landed in the right gene, the right intron, the right position to interact with the ALU-SX1 already present in the adjacent intron from millions of years before, waiting for a partner that no one knew it was waiting for. And that event happened only once in the entire evolutionary history of primates. Think about what could have been different. If ALU landed in intron 5 instead of intron 6, nothing would happen. If ALU-SX1 was not already there, nothing would happen. If the individual carrying that mutation died before reproducing, the mutation would disappear completely without a trace, like millions of other mutations that occurred and vanished without anyone knowing. All those conditions had to converge simultaneously, at the right time, in the right place, and they did converge. The entire evolutionary family tree from gibbon to gorilla to us traces back quietly to that moment, from a jumping gene that happened to land at exactly one point in the DNA of an ancestor we will never know the name of, on a morning 25 million years ago that no one recorded. Fire, the wheel, language, cities, art, science, everything you call human history began from that. And 25 million years later, a graduate student cut his hand in the kitchen, sat bored in the emergency room waiting area, and happened to find it. There is no grand design in that story. Just a small molecular accident landing in the right place at the right time once, passed silently through millions of generations, and its consequences are still present in every cell of yours right now. So the next time you look at the dog wagging its tail, the cat keeping balance on top of the wall, the monkey swinging from this branch to that branch, do not think that you are missing something. Instead, think about the coccyx at the base of your spine, the thing you only remember when you fall hard onto the hard floor. That is not a meaningless vestigial bone. That is the final remnant of a body part that your ancestors relied on for millions of years, switched off by a mobile piece of DNA landing in the right place on a morning 25 million years ago, coming with a hidden price that we are still paying, and it turned out to be worth more than anything evolution ever traded. Every other species kept their tails because they still need them. You do not have a tail because 25 million years ago, evolution found a different path. That path led to here. If the story of a mobile piece of DNA landing in the right place and changing the entire history of the human species makes you look back at your own body in a different way, then there are many more things like that waiting to be unearthed evolutionary mysteries whose real answers are stranger than any speculation. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next time we dig deep into the things hidden inside you from millions of years ago.